Hi, my name is Emma Comstock-Reed. I am an 8th grade math teacher, and the goal of this video is to help teachers help students solidify their understanding of the laws of exponents and move from working only with powers of 10 to looking at those same laws with other bases and moving into then dealing with problems that have more than one base. So we're following the illustrative math progression, and if you are following along in the shared drive on Teach Hub, we're on week 25 of the lessons that are adapted from illustrative math for unit 7. And in this unit, students start off understanding how the laws of exponents work using only bases of 10. And the big learning of this week is moving into taking that knowledge of laws of exponents, understanding that they still apply when we have other bases, and then beginning to think about, well, how do we simplify when we're given information that has different bases to start off with? So the way that illustrative math structure works is that students are given time to play around with and explore an idea that eventually we generalize together into a rule. So at this moment in time, students have had those experiences only with base 10, and they have generalized rules for base 10, and we solidified that knowledge in anchor charts, again, for base 10. So what illustrative math suggests we do as we move into other bases is take those same anchor charts and swap out the 10 for a B that will represent base. So let's look at an example of that. So you can see here, this is my multiplying powers rule that you've already established with students after they've had a chance to explore this themselves. And as we move into this week, after students have their experiences and their lessons, you're going to come up with this shared understanding that B is now going to represent any base because they've played around and they've seen that this rule, this law still applies with a different base that is not 10. And then illustrative math also suggests that we take our why does this work and remove the 10s and choose any other base. So I have strategically used a different base in each of these examples for each of these different power rules, because we also want to be careful when we create anchor charts that we're not accidentally teaching into something that we don't mean to be teaching into. So if I had used a base of 8 in all of these anchor charts, I would be kind of communicating to students that, okay, well now we know it works with 10 and it works with 8. And the goal of this unit is to generalize the rules so that they work with any base. And you want to think about how are you communicating that in every aspect of what you're doing this week. And on the same topic of communicating about exponents, we want to continue to use the language that we started using when we talked about powers of 10. And we want to be very conscious of keeping that language consistent. So as we use expanded form, and you can see expanded form comes up in all 3 examples, you can see that we rely on the expanded form to help us support the why does this work. So when we talk about expanded form, it's really important that we use the language of 3 factors that are 8, just like we said 3 factors that are 10, because it reinforces that 3 in the exponent for 10 to the 3rd power, for 8 to the 3rd power, for any base to the 3rd power, that exponent is still communicating the number of factors we have that are the base. And by using that language of factors that are, we help teach away from the misconception that we're just repeatedly adding again, right? That 8 to the 3rd power means 8 times 3. By saying 3 factors that are 8 times 2 factors that are 8 gives us 5 factors that are 8, we're reinforcing both the meaning behind the exponent and the base, and we're helping avoid the misconception that an exponent is just one step of multiplication, just like if I wrote 8 times 3 or 8 times 2. So as we transition from base 10 to B as representing any base, we are also reinforcing what we started to discuss when we talked about zero powers and negative powers. So the advantage of the way that illustrative math organizes this, that students are exposed with base 10 to everything, and we go back in and add on the layer of different bases. The advantage is that it lets students put the cognitive load on only one new thing at a time. And it has the other advantage of spiraling in really important concepts about exponents that take some time to learn. So in this slide deck for our anchor charts, we have the zero powers rule, which students first addressed with base 10, with 3 different ways of showing why it works. And you have the option to keep all 3 ways or focus on one way, but you can see on the left we have the idea of as the power decreases, we divide by the base, just like as the power increases, we multiply the base. And then on the right we have kind of using the laws of exponents to support our rule that anything to the 0 power is 1. So you can see why this works using the product law and using the quotient rule at the bottom. And again, you have the option to emphasize whatever came up the most as you had these discussions with real students. So you want this to connect back when it's an anchor chart to real conversations that you had in class. You would never want to lead with this to teach something new. And then the other aspect that we're reinforcing here with new bases is negative powers. So again, students were introduced with powers of 10, and we're now swapping out the 10 for a B to represent any base, and we're giving an example with a different base. And finally, the new rule that we're teaching into this week is combining powers. So you want to still go back to the language of 3 factors that are, 3 factors that are, and then you also want to use that expansion as justification. So you don't want this to feel like it came out of left field for students. You want it to connect to things they already know in your language and in the examples that you use. And you want to use an anchor chart like this to solidify knowledge, not to introduce new knowledge. So this will come up after students have been exposed to the lessons about combining bases. And when you discuss bases and exponents throughout this unit, you're going to continue to go back to the language of factors that are, and continue to go back to the example of expanding when you're trying to prove a new rule. Thank you for making it this far with me, talking about the content for week 25 and transitioning from bases of 10 to any base and to combining bases. I want to just close this video with a suggestion for how to organize your Google Classroom, if that's what you're using. With students, I call anchor charts reminder posters. You could name the topic whatever you would like. But one suggestion I really do think is helpful for kids is to use symbols, not just words. So I use this little painting of a cat to signal to students that the material I posted is a reminder poster / anchor chart. So that's one suggestion I have for your organization for your classroom. I hope some of this was helpful to you in your planning for teaching laws of exponents and helping students stay organized and remember content throughout a unit. Have a beautiful day. Thanks for joining me.